When I look up at the sky at night and try to wrap my head around the vastness of everything, it does not seem unlikely that there is life out there. That there is some fantastical planet inhabited by vibrantly colored plants and creatures, not unlike the ones on Pandora in Avatar or Arrakis in Dune. But outside of movies and books, evidence of this or any other kind of life only exists on one planet, and it's the one that I'm standing on. Some men would have us believe that what we have here is easy to recreate, that we might pack some provisions onto a rocket and simply colonize Mars whenever the resources that this planet provides run out. Do they know how complex this world really is? Earth is the only planet in the solar system that has a biosphere, which, according to the Columbia Encyclopedia, is a closed and self-regulating system sustained by grand-scale cycles of energy and of materials. More simply, the biosphere is the parts of our planet above, on, and below the surface that support life. The biosphere is made up of biomes. Dividing it into different biomes makes it easier for scientists to study the planet, but how many biomes there are and where they begin and end is not a natural fact, but a question of interpretation. Chapman and Rice call the concept of biomes a convenient shorthand for describing the world's flora and fauna, and go on to describe 36 different ones, whereas we were taught that there are 7, with potential for arguing any number between 5 and 9. The 7 major terrestrial biomes that we were taught make up the biosphere are the polar, tundra, taiga, grassland, desert, tropical rainforest, and temperate forest biome. We differentiate between these based on 4 aspects: their climate, soil, vegetation, and wildlife. The polar biomes are situated between about latitude 60 and 90 from the equator, so the angle at which the sunlight reaches them is very low. The tilt of the Earth's rotational axis also means that both the Arctic and Antarctica experience 6 months of continuous night each year as the planet moves around the sun. The effect of this is that it is very cold throughout the year, so the soil is covered by ice and there is very little plant life. The food web, as described in marine biology, function, diversity, ecology, is based on phytoplankton blooms triggered by sediment from the ocean floor, which is stirred up by, stored in, and then released from the ice during the cycle of freezing and thawing. In the Arctic, the plankton feeds small fish, which go on to feed Sterna paradisea, Arctic terns, and seals, who are in turn prey for Ursus maritimus, the polar bear. Arctic terns are prolific travelers, migrating from the Arctic when the summer there ends to Antarctica, some 33,000 kilometers every year. In Antarctica, things also start with phytoplankton, but here it is eaten by Antarctic krill, who in turn are prey for almost every other species in Antarctica, including the Adelie penguin, who uses the coast of Antarctica as a breeding ground before migrating north and taking advantage of holes in the ice to forage fish and krill. Because of the low temperatures in the polar regions, dead matter calcifies or freezes rather than being added back into the carbon cycle by decomposers. This makes the polar biomes great hubs for carbon sequestration. Tundra is characterized by short and mostly treeless vegetation. Since it is a biome found at high latitudes, the temperature is low and the growing season is short, causing production by plants to be low, and deeper layers of the soil are frozen year-round, which is the reason for the low vegetation, since there is no space for plants with deep roots. The tundra also gets very little precipitation, less than some deserts, but at the same time evaporation is slow there due to the cold, so the tundra is still wet and boggy. Wildlife that thrives in the tundra biome includes herbivores like musk oxen and reindeer, as well as small mammals like lemmings. Lemmings are actually considered a keystone species because they live under the snow in the winter, feed on seeds and roots, and provide nutrients for the relatively poor soil. They also serve as the main food source for predators like snowy owls or Arctic foxes, affecting their numbers with their boom and bust population cycles. The taiga is a biome made up mainly of coniferous forest that stretches all around the planet. making up some 17 million square kilometers of Earth's surface. The word is Russian in origin, according to researchers at the Taiga Biological Station, and originally meant a marshy forest in Siberia, but now describes the circumpolar coniferous forest. Taiga is found in North America, Scandinavia, Russia, Japan, and Mongolia, and is dominated by evergreen trees like larch, spruce, and pine, as well as birch. The high latitude of the biome means that the summers are short and the winters long and cold, so the animals that live there have to be able to survive in harsh conditions. Animals that thrive there include moose, who prefer plants that grow in boggy pots of the taiga, and snowshoe hare, who owe their name to proportionally large feet that allow them to walk on top of snow and which are predated by owls and lynxes. Two of the keystone species in this biome are beavers and salmon. Salmon form the basis for many predators' diets, while beavers work as ecosystem engineers, creating wetlands with their dam-building activities. Some forested parts of the tundra and the taiga biome might be hard to tell apart, so the same scientists at the Taiga Biological Station define taiga as an area where a red squirrel can travel from tree to tree without having to come down to the ground. Grassland is an area dominated by grasses throughout the year, but wildflowers and shrubs or scattered trees can also grow there. The area where grassland flourishes has to have the right kind of conditions so that it neither turns into a desert or forest. These conditions vary depending on location and include abiotic factors like regular fire, relatively low rainfall, and high frequencies of frost, as well as biotic factors like grazing by large herbivores such as elephants or bison. Grassland is the most widespread biome and occurs on every continent other than in the polar regions. Depending on where it is found, it is called by different names, such as steppe, pampas, and savanna. Savanna and tropical grassland is found either side of the equator up to latitude 30, whereas temperate grassland types can tend to be found between latitude 30 and 60 north and south. Species differ depending on where the grassland is temperate or tropical, but in a tropical grassland, the trophic levels might be made up of red oat grass as a producer, which is eaten by primary consumers like elephants or termites. A termite makes a tasty dinner for a hungry secondary consumer like an aardvark, who finally ends up feeding a tertiary consumer or apex predator like a lion, hyena, or leopard. Elephants are considered a keystone species of savanna ecosystems because of their grazing activities, which keeps the grassland from turning into a forest. The desert biome is a world of extremes shaped by its characteristic aridity. Deserts are found between 15 and 35 degrees north and south of the equator and receive below 250 millimeters of rain per year. The fluctuation of temperature between day and night is great, ranging between an average of 38 degrees during the day to -4 degrees at night. This extreme temperature and the fact that the soil is low in nutrients and organic matter means that very little vegetation is able to grow here. The plants that do grow are cacti and succulents, which store water in thick leaves and stems that are often covered in a shiny, waxy layer that reflects sunlight, and who photosynthesize at night to reduce water loss. To thrive in this biome, animals have to be hardy. Desert fauna includes reptiles who thrive in the heat, camels which store water in their humps, and large-eared species such as fennec foxes and black-tailed jackrabbits. A keystone species in the desert is the desert tortoise, who builds burrows which are used by many other creatures like roadrunners, Gila monsters, and snakes. The oldest biome on our list, the tropical rainforest, is also the most biodiverse habitat on Earth. The biome occurs between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, very close to the equator, where sunlight strikes almost straight on, producing intense solar energy that keeps temperatures high, between 18 degrees and 30 degrees Celsius. High temperatures keep the air warm and wet, with an average humidity of between 77% and 88%, according to National Geographic. This humidity causes frequent strong rains, so rainforests receive about 10 times the amount of water deserts do per year, which enables the growth of thick and luxurious vegetation with very distinct layers. These layers are the emergent layer, where individual trees grow high above, the canopy layer, which is thick with vegetation and life, and creates a kind of roof over the rest of the forest below, shielding it from light, wind, and rain. The understory, where only about 2% of sunlight penetrates, so the plants that grow there often have large leaves to maximize their photosynthetic capabilities, and the herb and shrub layer, which usually has barely any plant growth. Dead matter here is quickly decomposed and reabsorbed through the roots or else leached out into the groundwater by consistent rain. This means that, despite all the abundance above, rainforest soil is surprisingly poor in nutrients. The rainforests are home to countless animal species, from frogs and decomposers and African forest elephants on the ground, to jaguars and boa constrictors in the understory, and colorful birds and spider monkeys in the canopy. A keystone species in the rainforest biome is the western lowland gorilla, because they eat a lot of fruit and spread the seeds, but also because they engineer their surroundings by creating clearings when new growth can occur. Temperate forest is the second most widespread forest biome after the taiga, and like the taiga, it also spreads all around the planet like a belt, but it is much closer to the equator, making it a little bit less cold throughout the year. In fact, temperatures tend to be relatively moderate, with 4 distinct seasons and consistent rainfall all through the year. There are 4 main types of temperate forest depending on where they are found, which are deciduous forest, made up of broadleaf trees like birch, oak, and maple; coniferous forest, made up of evergreen trees such as spruce and fir; mixed forest, which, as the name suggests, contains both types of trees; and finally temperate rainforest, which gets more rainfall than the others, and for that reason has trees with bark covered in lush mosses and lichen, and green forest floors covered in fern. Because of the winters they experience, the broadleaf trees, in preparation for the cold, drop their leaves in autumn. Worms and fungi then turn them into nutrient-rich humus, which causes the soil in this biome to be very fertile. The temperate forest animals have all kinds of different strategies to survive the winter, like hibernating, migrating, growing thick furs, or, in the case of squirrels, making big food stores by burying nuts and seeds in the autumn months when they are plentiful. In the temperate deciduous forests of the United Kingdom, organisms interact in a complex web of relationships to create and maintain the ecosystems they inhabit. These relationships can be between members of 2 different species, or interspecific, as well as between members of the same species, or intraspecific. Ecologists tend to distinguish 7 different relationships, which are competition, herbivory, predation, and symbiosis, with symbiosis being split into 4 forms: mutualism, commensalism, parasitism, and amensalism. Competition can occur intraspecifically, as when 2 male robins vie for the affections of the same female by way of a song contest, in which the man with the greatest repertoire usually ends up winning. Interspecific competition could be the competition between red and gray squirrels. Since they both rely on the same food source, but the gray squirrel is bigger and a faster forager, the pressure from this competition reduces red squirrel numbers dramatically. Herbivory refers to the relationship between primary consumers and producers. The primary consumers, for example red deer, will feed on producers such as leaves, new tree shoots, and shrubs. They gain 10% of the overall energy that the producers have captured through photosynthesis. Their grazing also enables new growth, making openings for renewal in the forest. However, due to a lack of apex predators like wolves or lynxes, the numbers of deer are too high for the forest to regrow, causing the shrub layer to be so impoverished that it drastically reduces the number of native birds who nest in the shrub layer. This top-down effect on an ecosystem, usually by removal of a predator species, is called trophic cascade, and illustrates just how complex the web of relationships in an ecosystem tend to be. The red deer is not only an example for herbivory, but also for predator-prey, or predation relationships. In predator-prey relationships, one species, the secondary or tertiary consumer or predator, relies on another species, the primary or secondary consumer or prey, as their food source. In the UK, the biggest and most prolific bird of prey is the golden eagle, who can feed on deer. Unfortunately, golden eagles are incredibly rare, so their effectiveness in controlling deer populations is limited, but reintroduction programs are creating hope that they could be more effective in the future. Mutualism is a symbiotic relationship where both organisms benefit from the interaction. For example, mycorrhizal networks, the parts of fungi that grow below ground, are connected to trees through their roots and enable them to absorb more water and nutrients, basically extending their root networks. In return, trees provide fungi with sugars. If one of the participants benefits while the other remains completely unaffected, that's called commensalism. One example of this would be mosses growing on trees, who receive more sunlight because they're closer to the canopy, while the trees are affected neither positively nor negatively. Ticks bite deer, hold on and gorge on their blood. As ticks bite, they can transfer all kinds of diseases to their hosts, causing infections and even death. This is called parasitism and is characterized by one organism gaining a benefit while another organism is harmed in the process. The final relationship, amensalism, is a very rare ecological relationship, which is where one of the organisms involved is harmed while the other is unaffected. An example of this is the black walnut tree. It carries growth-inhibiting substances in its roots, which cause other plants to be unable to grow nearby. Each of these biomes and ecological relationships is, in different ways, affected by human interference. Aldo Leopold wrote in a Sand County almanac that one of the penalties of ecological education is that one lives alone in a world of wounds, meaning that to study ecology is to have your eyes open to all the ways in which the natural world you see around you isn't all that natural or even healthy at all. For example, the current rate of extinction is about 150 species per day. If this sounds like an insane number to begin with, listen to this. The natural rate of extinction that occurs with no human interference is estimated to be about 1 or 2 species per year. The numbers are so high that scientists believe we are currently experiencing a mass extinction, not unlike the one that wiped out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. In his 2002 book, The Future of Life, Edward O. Wilson coined the term hippo. Each letter stands for one of the human activities that Wilson believed are most detrimental to biodiversity. H stands for habitat loss due to urbanization, farming, and fragmentation of habitats. The I stands for invasive species, which can cause the loss of native species by outcompeting them or infecting them with zoonotic diseases that their immune systems have no capacity to fight. The first P stands for pollution. Our constant extraction of fossil fuels, our use of pesticides in agriculture, our lights that are turning the night into day, and our incessant purchase and disposal of plastic products do irreparable damage to the environment. We are poisoning the water, the air, and the soil, enriching the bodies of fish with microplastics and causing birds and turtles to turn the wrong way on their journeys to safe environments. The second P stands for population, referring to the fact that human beings, through their use of science and technology, have artificially overextended the carrying capacity of their habitats, and therefore are reproducing without reaching a natural cap. Even if every person on Earth was living as environmentally consciously as they could, the planet still would not have the resources to carry the amount of life it is currently having to. The O stands for overharvesting, or the use of resources to such a degree that they cannot naturally replenish. Human impact on the environment and biodiversity has not always been so negative, though. Initially, farming increased biodiversity, before industrial-scale farming turned the countryside into monocultures. It allowed species to thrive that depended on more open land rather than forested area. Native people all over the world are also still examples of positive human impact on the environment. The UN Environmental Programme wrote in 2023 that, While Indigenous peoples account for just over 6% of the global population, Indigenous peoples and local communities are custodians of more than a third of the world's important areas for biodiversity, and researchers have found that 42% of land that is managed by Indigenous peoples and local communities is in good ecological condition. This makes it apparent that human life and management of the environment does not have to be detrimental when it is done with knowledge of the place in which it is taking place. Seemingly, it is not necessarily humanity itself that is the problem, but rather the capitalist project of the global West. Practices like the ways in which the commons were managed before the enclosures show that the human use of land was not always as harmful as it is today, even in the West. To end on a less depressing note, I would like to mention some of the exciting projects that are happening in the UK and globally. For example, the Knepp Estate and the rewilding project there is generating a lot of attention for rewilding as a whole. River restoration projects are being undertaken on a large scale in the UK, re-meandering rivers that had previously been straightened. In America, a large-scale dam removal project on the Klamath has recently seen returns of local salmon, which had not bred there in years. Many farmers are practicing and tweaking regenerative agriculture methods, figuring out natural ways to irrigate their land and creating crops that are naturally hardy to pests. Even though the prognosis for us and our way of life on the planet is not great, the tech bros' urge to build a big rocket and go to space is ultimately cowardice. There are changes to be made on this planet by us. They might not be glamorous or particularly flashy, and none of them involve a quick fix that will excite shareholders, but in the end, I think most of us would agree, if faced with the choice, that we would rather leave the colonization of space to someone else and focus our own energy on looking after this world of wounds. Maybe if we do that, we will not be so alone in it anymore.